Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hit and Hustle, another live show from irishsportsdaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me is Jamie University. He is on site in South Bend. He was at Pro Day today, and that's what we're going to be mainly talking about. Is Notre Dame's Pro Day. Also, there's an open practice that Jamie's going to be there for tomorrow, so that's going to be really exciting and fun for us to talk about. And then there's some recruiting. There's some recruiting stuff going on right now. There's some pretty big time prospects who I don't think are on campus yet, but they'll be there over the weekend. And then obviously, Dante Moore, 5-star quarterback, is coming in on Monday. So, but let's kick it off, Jamie. First of all, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Good to be back in the Bend. Excited about it.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to be there until like 2 days ago. So that made me very jealous. I had some big FOMO stuff going on. So, all right, you're on site for Pro Day. So give me the layout. Tell me what your observations were. Just like let's talk about the setup of the event, right? Like who was all there? How did Notre Dame put it together? What kind of day was it? Just kind of overall from a production standpoint.
Yeah, well, I've been to probably like four of the pro days in the last few years. It just kind of like so happened that it was like during times that it is always during spring ball, and I was here for practices. Obviously, it's not something that I would just make the trip for, but yeah, it was. This is the first one in the new practice facility there, which was much better than the previous one in the Googs and how that was set up. Um, and just to answer Matthew's question on the right, it was televised on Peacock, but I don't think they showed everything. And I think it was on like
They
Friday night
definitely
or
didn't
something.
show the 40s because that came out like an hour and a half before they were scheduled to come on.
Yeah. It's one of these things where it's like we show up at 10. They're doing like measuring and stuff of like all the people that are there. Obviously, there's all the Notre Dame players that are there that are that everyone knows: Kyle Hamilton, Kyron Williams, Kurt Heinisch, Drew White, Myron Tagovailoa-Mosa, Kevin Austin, Jack Cohn, those guys that are there. But then there was additional guys that were, working out as well that, NFL free agents that are trying to get a look again. So Asmar Bilal was back there, was back on campus. Dante Vaughn was back working out. And obviously, like, the focus isn't on those guys. Like, you're, hoping that those guys get picked up and stuff. But they're there just because there's going to be so many scouts there that we're going to look. And I saw there was someone on Twitter. I don't know who works for NFL media. I'm not sure. I wasn't familiar with them before. I just saw on their Twitter account, and they said that they reported that like Green Bay's GM was going to be there. Kevin Colbert, the Steelers GM, was going to be there. Head coach of the New Orleans Saints, Dennis Allen's going to be there. Ron Rivera. Those guys weren't there. I have no idea where this guy got this information from. They weren't there, or if they were there, they weren't on the field. And if they're not on the field,
why there?
not? It doesn't make sense because like I said, I've been to a bunch of these other pro days before, and like Mike Tomlin was at the one for Deshaun Kaiser, was on the field, like watching it, right? And obviously when Quentin Nelson had his pro day, right? They had the Colts GM was right there on the field, like watching him like a hawk. Like, John Lynch was at Deshaun Kaiser's work. Like, these guys are there. They're on the field. They're not. What's the point of coming to a pro day if you're watching from afar, right? So, but there was 27 teams there that I counted that were there. So obviously a ton of representation. A lot of like teams sent multiple people. So plenty of scouts in attendance. They, set up where like media were on the ground kind of watching. There's obviously that's where the scouts are too. Up top is, all of like the current players were up top, cheering the guys on. And then there was guys, on the ground too that were, a bunch of former players end up showing up. Alohi Gilman was there. Troy Pride was there. Jerome Bettis, as I said, I said to Matt, I'm like, man, Jerome Bettis is showing up to a lot of these things. He's like is there anything better to do in
He's
South
a
Bend?
student,
Yes.
he's on camp. Maybe at a Friday class, maybe he
Yeah.
had a little seminar, and then he had to, he just came over. So
he came over and he was interacting with like a bunch of like the players and the former players and stuff too, and talking to a bunch of scouts and the coaches, and obviously the Notre Dame coaching staff was there, and Jeremiah Wilson-Cormo was there, Sean Crawford was there, bunch of former NFL guys. Zach Martin was also on campus. So yeah, a lot of Notre Dame guys going there, showing love to the guys that are competing, and yeah, it was overall, I think it was, I think the guys that everyone knows are going to get drafted high or have the potential to get drafted are the guys that we're mostly focusing on. But you never know where a day like this, maybe it gets a guy like Kurt Hinish into a camp, maybe it gets Drew White into a camp, and you kind of see from there.
Right. Yeah, and it was really cool to see. Like it was interesting to see Jonathan Jones come back, because is this the first time that Notre Dame had a former player who they then played against at one of their pro days? I can't think of. I know I know they've had guys come back before, but I don't like Everett Golson, for example. He came back and was at Notre Dame's pro day, but he didn't actually play against Notre Dame. Like Jonathan Jones played against Notre Dame last year. So that's like just a funny.
I don't know.
tidbit.
You know what? That's a good question. I can't think of one on the top of my head, but you know what? They're going to play Boston College and George Sakic this year. Could happen.
I
don't think Phil Dracovic.
You don't think so? You don't
I don't think
Phil's
he's going to Notre Dame's pro day, but George Sakic, I could see doing that.
Yeah.
Because you know what? There's going to be way more. Sorry, Fredo, but there's going to be way more scouts at Notre Dame's pro day next year than there is going to be at Boston College's pro day.
Right. He'll probably
but I'm sure a lot of people are going to be there to watch Dracovic, so
he'll probably want to throw to Michael Mayer, though.
Yeah,
that's probably what.
Yeah, they're going to watch Michael Mayer, Isaiah Foskey. There's going to be a lot. They're going to be well represented again. Yeah.
Okay, so just some I guess highlights that I saw. So Kyle Hamilton ran the 40 again. Proved his time to 4.56. I don't know. I think that's probably for him. It didn't hurt him, right?
Didn't hurt. I mean, improved slightly. I think. I mean, as well as anyone, Greg. He plays a lot faster than mid 4.5s. He plays probably mid 4.4s, and that's just I mean, he's obviously explosive in other ways, like with the vert and the stuff that didn't test today because he just ran the 40 today.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely a time that's not going to see him drop to a spot. Like he's still going to be a top 5, top 10 pick at the very least. I would imagine it would be shocking if he dropped out of the top 10.
Yeah, and to improve the time, I mean, that probably validates, because I know a lot of people were kind of shocked because of his GPS numbers, which obviously, those will tell a tale for how fast he's playing, right? And again, the vertical and the broad jump kind of show how explosive he is as a player, so it's not like a super big deal. The big jump on the 40 was Kyron Williams, right? Going from 4.65 to 4.54, like a full 10th
that's big.
Notable. That's notable, right? So that's a big deal for his kind of draft stock, right? So that's not as fast as Josh Adams, but that's faster than Dexter Williams. It's faster than obviously Tony Jones Jr. It's faster than Darius Walker, right? So that's a good time for him.
It's a really good time.
Yeah,
it's what I would have expected him to run at Indianapolis, frankly.
Did he speak today?
Yeah, Kyron, he did. Yeah, he talked after.
Did he address that just in terms of what the difference was?
He said that he had times, his times before were in the low 4.5s, mid 4.5 range when he was doing testing before the combine. So he assumed that he was going to run that, and he was obviously disappointed with what he ran there. And he just said, he just went back to work, and, it was just one of these things where he felt obviously this is for a lot of guys, they feel a little bit more comfortable in the setting where, where he's used to on his regular practice field running that. And he did, and he felt comfortable just the people around him. And I mean, he looked great today. I mean, it did look fast when he ran it in person. So I was not surprised at all at the time. I was like, that was faster.
Yeah.
100%. I would have been shocked if it was in the 4.6 range. So yeah, he ran faster, looked fantastic catching the ball. Not a surprise at all, but really caught the deep ball well and tracked it well. Obviously, there's that one spectacular catch he made over his shoulder. Yeah, he looked really good. I don't see how he did anything today but improve the stock.
So you mentioned the pass catching that you would mention in your observations. You were really impressed with Jack Cohn and the way that he performed today. Let's talk about that, because I think, it's so hard with Jack Cohn in terms of like the way that people view him, because you're the whole thing is kind of muddled by the start of the season. And then obviously as the season goes on, it gets a lot better. And I think people's opinion has, started to turn a little bit. And now we're fully at the point where, because he had the good All-Star game. He had the good All-Sar game. He performed well there. And
Fiesta Bowl, huge numbers.
Right. Fiesta Bowl obviously was very good against a very good defense. And in the All-Star game, he did well. And that wasn't just from, just like from Notre Dame people talking about it. Like that was from outside observers and professional, scouts and that sort of thing. And then you saw him today and you said you were really impressed. So, and I know the deep ball is something that he struggled with during games, and you were impressed by that. So talk about a little bit, what impressed you, and, how do you think this kind of, not just today, but the whole process, like how that has kind of jumped him up in the eyes of NFL teams.
One, I thought his arm looked really good. Just like arm strength, the zip on the ball was great, especially on the intermediate throws. I thought that was something that later in the season you saw him be better with. So that's not a total surprise. But even based on, say, like I saw him throw in person in August, and I thought it's looked better than that from that time, right? And certainly I think in this situation too, like the deep ball, like the numbers are the numbers. He didn't throw the deep ball well and missed a lot. And I think one of the things too is there was just like an inconsistency with how he threw it. And today, it was just really consistent with, putting air under the ball. And like, he dropped like probably like 3 or 4 like big time dimes on deep balls that maybe he threw one of those all year,
Right.
Like I think maybe I could say that Kevin Austin throw against Wisconsin is one that sticks out, like that he really dropped in the bucket. And there weren't too many of those, right? And with this, he really only missed bad. Like there was one where Kevin Austin, had to track it a little bit, lost it a little bit. It would have had to have been another great catch like Kyron made. But still, it was still a ball that was catchable. It was there, right? And that's a play that you would expect, like an NFL receiver is going to make a lot, not all the time, but some of the time, right? And I think ball placement, he was really, really good. Never really left the ball. I mean, maybe counted like 2 throws where he put the ball kind of behind. Put one low on Kyron, and Kyron made it look smooth, like he. Like it was right on the money. But a lot of the stuff that you can made for the throws he made were plays where the guys were going to make plays after the catch on those throws. And I know you're going against air, and everyone is supposed to look good, but he did exactly what he was supposed to. He looked really, really good. And I just thought there was a zip and a confidence with him that you kind of saw later in the year. Like it looked like he built off of that from later in the year. And to me, that was like the most impressive thing. I wrote 5 balls hit the ground. One he led Kevin off a little bit too much. It was off the fingertips. Another one, was that Austin deep ball that I mentioned that could have been like maybe a 50-50 chance or whatever. and then 2 were to another. There was an NAIA receiver who was working there with them. Who, I mean, if it was, say, like Avery Davis running those routes, he's making those catches.
Right.
You know, is the way I would put it. And then another one where he just missed Kyren, right? Like he missed them on a slot fade. So really, I would say the one he led Austin inside, and then the slot fade were the only real misses of the day. So, I mean, that's a pretty good day if you're doing that. And they were, you know, he was working them. Tommy Rees was working them hard.
Yeah, and I think like it's one thing to say like everyone knows you're supposed to complete passes, you know, against error, right? Like it's not that. It's like you said, like, you could just kind of tell when someone is zipping the ball and they're spinning it like you want, right? And that's why, you know, you see some pro days where, you know, like a lot of people weren't impressed with Ian Book's pro day, right? And you had messaged me like you thought that Cone was more impressive than those, you know, than Ian Book's and Deshaun Kaiser's, right? So the point is, it's like you can tell against error, against anything, right? You can tell when someone's doing a good job, and he's been doing that, and I totally agree with what you said. Like it just seems like the momentum for Jack Cone has just been building and building ever since the bye week, really, you know, and good for him, right? Like
I think he's going to make an NFL roster.
Yeah, this is why he came to Notre Dame, right? For this specific opportunity, and he took advantage of it, you know, and now he's doing the thing, and he got to work out with Kevin Austin. Man, if I looked like Kevin Austin, I would never wear a shirt.
Yeah,
I would never have a shirt on.
He's like a Greek god.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. That guy, he's just physically impressive. But he obviously he moves really well. I always like the way that Kevin Austin caught the ball too. They're like he just snatches the ball with like his hands, right? Like super strong hands, which makes the drops like super weird. It doesn't feel right that he would have that happen to him. So there's that, and obviously Kyren gets a chance to showcase, you know, what he can do as far as, you know, just like the versatility that he has.
Yeah, route running, just twitch and just catch his ball skills. You know, really good ball. Like he's going to be there's going to be teams who look at him and say, I want him as a slot.
Yeah.
Like I really believe that with him. So, and because of that, he is going to have a chance to probably extend his career, because we all know a lot of backs, you know, it's a one contract league really for backs for the most part. So I think he can be a 2 contract guy in the league. And if you're doing that as a running back, that's a win. Right. And, you know, and I don't know, he doesn't want to be like stuck in the mold of this is your third down back. But I mean, what he can do in that kind of situation, really, the NFL is a third down league now, right? It's a passing league. Like second down is third down now for a lot.
I mean, James White had a whole career based on being a third down back, right? Like, you know, I know he doesn't want that, right? And I understand why he doesn't, and that makes total sense. But the paycheck is the paycheck, you know. If you're out there doing it, then you're.
I think of like Kevin Falk and something, a guy like that, and I'm like, Kyren Williams has the potential to have that kind of career. He does. He does. And you know what? Before, and I wrote 6 thoughts earlier this week, his times were. He was almost identical to Theo Riddick. And I can tell you could do a lot worse than having a career like Theo Riddick. He caught 80 balls one year in the NFL. You know, he got 3 contracts, right? So,
I saw, it's funny. I was talking to someone about this because I was looking at the times and I was wondering where Theo went. And obviously Theo was a 6th round pick, right? And he ran, you know, the all the measurables and everything was similar. Theo Riddick made $14 million in the NFL.
Yeah,
would take, you know, like I would take that
for a 6th round pick.
Yeah.
It's like, he did well for himself. Yeah,
and I think Kyren is just like just a bit better at everything, which is no slight to Theo, right? Like Theo's obvious, like he doesn't have to prove anything. He's in the NFL for like 6-7 years, right? So he doesn't have anything to prove, but I think Kyren is just a bit better at everything that Theo was. So obviously that goes to show like there's lasting value in what Kyren Williams' skill set is.
Absolutely, definitely, and I think, yeah, and I think just today, I mean, there's going to be obviously some scouts who probably already think of him in a certain way, but if you appreciate what he's good at, then today only made you more of an appreciator of that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so there's the kind of the Kyle Hamilton, Kyron Williams, Jack Cohn, Kevin Austin. I don't think worked out really.
No,
Because
he didn't work out, but he did obviously run
he
routes
ran the
and
routes, right?
look great. Look
Yeah,
great.
like that's what he needs because like the tape is he doesn't have as much tape as everybody else, right? So
Yeah,
he showed the
and he
physical
obviously lit
ability,
up the combine with his testing.
right?
So he doesn't need to go back and run another 40 or jump again or whatever or do any of that. He needs to go show he can catch the ball, show he can get in and out of his breaks, like footwork. And I thought today was the best day that I thought for him that I've seen from him in terms of just route running and the footwork and all of that. Just attention to detail with stuff. And he's always been a guy who's like, I guess the best way to describe it is I remember I went to the 2009 Notre Dame coaching clinic, and that was the
2019
Michael Floyd.
is what you're talking.
No,
Oh, no,
no,
okay,
2009.
got it.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
got it.
Michael Floyd, Charlie Weiss's last year, right? So Michael Floyd, when you watch practice, and Michael Floyd was an animal. Like just the way he ran through the bags, and I've written this story probably too many times that people Irish Sports Daily probably want to just say, okay, we've heard it already. But he ran through the bags like it was like the national championship game or the Super Bowl. Like he was intense every single thing he did. And I always thought that was one of the things with Kevin Austin is he didn't quite have that level. Like I don't think many guys, but he was approaching that,
Right.
Definitely not something you used to see from guys like Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool every day, right? And you saw it got better over time with them, but you kind of always saw that with Austin, which is also a reason why I was like, this guy is going to get better, and which is also why I think his best football is ahead of him. He might be a guy who gets drafted in the 6th round, but he might end up being in the league for a decent amount of time. Mm-hmm. Like I honestly, I think like just he has the kind of work ethic, and he obviously has the physical skill set that I think that if he goes to the right team, here's the Marcus Valdes-Scantling, right? He was a 6th round pick, right? Or 5th round or whatever he was. He was a late round pick. Guy just got, $30 million contract with the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. I mean, wouldn't surprise me if Kevin Austin did that, right? Because I don't think his problems, because he had his early problems, his maturity problems, but I think those are behind him. And I think it was just health really that holding him back. Because if he was healthy during that the 2020 season, I think he was going to blow up that year.
Yeah.
I think he was going to blow up that year. And then that was really the only thing holding him back, really. And then he would have been better in 2021, et cetera, right? I think he just needs reps and time and work. And I think he's, he helped himself today. I don't, who knows? Sometimes guys like him, they don't get drafted because they don't have enough tape or whatever. Or there's definitely, you look at September of this year and you'd say, man, he's not a guy who can get drafted. But then you look at the end of the year and you say, I mean, this guy's pretty good. And you'd say Oklahoma State corners are pretty good. I mean, look darn good in that game.
Yeah. Yeah. And for him, it's easy to kind of say, like, I didn't chance to play, right? Like 2 years where it's like, I'm not playing. I'm only practicing in 19. And then in 20, I'm not doing anything because I broke my foot, right? So like, I don't have, I didn't get a ton of time to play, right? So it'd been a long time. So last year, some things are rusty. And, and it's one thing to say that, but then you come out later and you run, 4.43 and you do vertical 39 inches and you jump 11 feet and that sort of thing. And then and then you go to the pro day and everything looks really good. Right. So it's easy for teams to say like, okay, like that makes a lot of sense. Right. And he was obviously a highly touted player. So there's kind of a degree of pedigree there. So
the
story is all like, it's all kind of consistent. Right. So yeah, he has a chance there. Hopefully, when I watch him, I always wonder because when he runs the 40, right? So I'm watching him run the 40, like people run their 40s a certain kind of way, right? You're running it like a sprinter, but you don't run routes like a sprinter. You run routes like a wide receiver, right? Where you're getting off a jam, or you're hand fighting with the defender, right? Or you're not accelerating, getting into a drive phase when you're running a 15-yard dig or something like that, right? So my question is always like, does his speed when he's being harassed, does that translate the same way it does for someone like I mean, obviously this is like a super high draft pick, but someone like Devontae Smith, right, who's just super smooth in and out of breaks, someone like Garrett Wilson, someone like Chris Olave, guys like that.
Yeah.
So that's the question that he's going to have to answer, and obviously there's not a ton of tape.
Yeah, he's going to have to prove it, and he's going to have to be. That's why one of the reasons too. Like, I think there's a strong chance he's going to get drafted, on day 3, late in day 3, and he'll have a chance to go and kind of prove it in a camp, right. Really, and that's kind of what it is. And I just think when it comes to ability, I think there's more meat on the bone there. I think he's got a lot left to give.
Right. Okay. So outside of the top, I don't know, 4, who did anyone else stand out to you? Whether it be Kurt Hinish, you rep 31 times on the bench. That's really good. So there's that. There, Drew White. Even Asmar Bilal, right, or Dante Vaughn. Like, did anyone else stand out to you?
Well, Asmar Bilal, not that the guy always looked fantastic. He always looked like in phenomenal shape at Notre Dame, but man, he looks like he's 2 years out. He looks like he's a pro.
Yeah.
Right now, right? Like really, really, impressive. And I thought, moved well and ran well and all that kind of stuff too. But I don't know. Like, who knows, whether or not doing this kind of stuff today, because I feel like the track record of guys doing this, it's rare if for guys to kind of get, like, hopefully he gets a shot, but I don't know. Like, he would have to really, really just, wow somebody today. But all you got to do is wow one person and then gets into camp or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I think, out of the guys that, that were not kind of like featured, I'd say Hinish, I would just say, simply based on, he looked like really, really good shape. He definitely, from the point that when he first came to Notre Dame, like, he was pretty sloppy when he came to Notre Dame, and like a lot of kids, whatever, right? Like a lot of defensive tackles and nose guards, whatever. There's a lot of guys like that, and this is a guy who put in the work. Like, he
looked good. I saw him run his 40 with no shirt on, and I was like,
yeah. Put it this way: he wouldn't have been running that 40 with no shirt on 4 years ago.
Yeah, I was like, okay, like, there's definitely some.
Put it this way: Kane Madden wasn't running without a shirt on.
Actually,
he does not have
it. Yeah, Kane Madden. You know what? God bless him, man. That
no, he just does not have an. And there's whatever. There's some guys. I don't think he's going to be an NFL player. I think that's no surprise to anyone. But he, like Kane Madden, football, I think is over for him. I just think he's just someone who's, take it as far as his body can go. I think so. But there are some bad body guys in the NFL, but those guys are bigger than he is, frankly. Yeah. So I think that's problem with it. But I think Hinish looked quick in the drills. He moved well. I really, I just think size ultimately will be the thing. I hope he gets into, I think we lost it for a sec, Greg, but we're back. So,
yeah.
I think size is ultimately going to be the thing that he's just never going to be. Like, there's just way too many dudes. Like, if I was to compare him to, say, former Stanford, defense tackle Harrison Phillips, right? A guy I think stylistically is a similar player to Hinish. Well, he's just bigger.
Yeah.
He's just bigger, and that's really the kind of thing. And Harrison Phillips is doing pretty well in the NFL.
Right.
And I just think it's just going to be tough but I could totally see Heinisch still playing football and just like carrying on and like maybe not in the league. Like that's just the way I see it. MTA didn't really work out. He did was trying to do a 3-cone in the L drill and trying to improve on those, but then he was kind of struggling a little bit in terms of like getting it down, and then he tweaked his hammy. So he had a bit of a rough day for him. But I think what it really comes down to is, I mean, if you look film-wise, he's put it on enough where he could be a guy, but he fits that thing a tweener. I really think he should have, and everybody wants, like I've talked about a million times, defensive tackles want to be DNs, DNs want to be linebackers, linebackers want to be, that's how it is. And he probably wants to play defensive end, but I don't think he's a defensive end. Yeah. And I just don't think that, him being 270 is right. Like, I think he needs to go put that 20 pounds back on and be 290 and try to be a guy like that. And, maybe be a 3-tech, be a backup 3-tech in the league, maybe do that. And I'm certainly a guy that I'm rooting for, really, really like him. And, but yeah, so I just wonder about that. But I also think once you get into with pads on, he's a guy who's going to look better. So even if he's a free agent, he might be a guy who makes a team.
Right.
Because of that, right?
Like some guys, they put the pads on and they play the same speed, right? And some guys put the pads on and they get a little slower, right? And so then everything kind of meets in the middle. So, and it's hard too because like he's not the greatest athlete, but he lost weight to play defensive end at Notre Dame. I mean, it's like you can't try out for two positions, right? Like you can't, you kind of have to pick. Like, am I going to try to be like defensive end? It is in the combine and that sort of thing.
It might have been hard for him to put on the weight that he would,
especially good weight.
Yeah, like he's not going to put on a good 20 pounds from the season until now.
Right.
Just not. But I do think ultimately, if I was evaluating him as a player, or somebody asked me my opinion on it, not that any NFL team's going to ask me my opinion on it, but if they asked me, I would say this guy, I would take him and, get him into camp and see how he does. And maybe he's a practice squad guy, but if you take the time to kind of put the weight back on him the right way, I think he can play.
Yeah.
I think he can play. So
I agree. All right. Before we transition here, what you want to address the scandal of the day?
Oh, from Bucko's basement? He didn't give me the invite. He didn't give me the invite.
That's all?
I
don't know.
Not that I would have accepted it.
And hurtful.
I've heard tales of IC members going to Bucko's basement and never returning. So,
oh man.
I'll stick with the tailgates and meet Bucko there at the tailgates, and that's good enough for me.
All right. Okay, so that's put a cap on the pro day experience. Tomorrow, you are also in town for the only live practice. I shouldn't say the spring game will also be
the spring game also
for everybody. But in terms of this is the only full practice that the media will get to watch. So you are on site for that, and that's going to be great. You're going to get to see the team, and you don't have to parse through interview questions and that sort of thing, and you get to see everything for yourself. What are you going to be? What are you going to be focused on? What are your what are the things that you're keeping an eye on there?
Well, I mean, you try to watch, because it's only the one thing. You're going to try to watch everything as much as possible. So, I mean, I will try to watch the offense some, and I mean, obviously when they go team and stuff, I'm going to watch both sides. But outside of that, when they're doing stuff, I'll be mostly focusing on the defense. And I mean, I try to watch. That's the one thing that if you don't get the accumulation of times, you don't get to watch all of the new coaches too.
Right.
Because I enjoy watching the coaches and how they coach, and what kind of things they're saying, the kids and all that as well. So, but I mean, I'll be watching Al Washington. I'll be watching Al Golden. Certainly, like, I'll try to watch some of the other guys too. But I think those guys, I imagine I'll be watching them the most, and I'll be like trying to watch one-on-ones when they're doing that, in terms of when D-line, O-line is going one-on-ones. I'm going to, do my best to take a look at that. And I mean, really, I think overall, they're not going to show, it's very early in spring practice. They're not going to show a ton of scheme. They're not going to show, I imagine they'll be in base kind of stuff, show blitz a little, but not do anything too crazy. And it'll be more about watching players and kind of seeing, like, where's Marist at? How's he doing? Like, obviously Al Golden talked about Prince Colley this week and kind of where his development is. And he said he has a long way to go, but he also, said a lot of good things about him too. Right. And certainly he's a guy that I want to watch. I think the linebackers in general, where everyone's going to slot, I think that's going to be, really interesting to watch. And then, up front, like, Gabriel Rubio, I wrote about him earlier in the week. Like, that's a guy that I really hope that he has a great practice, and that, that's a guy that I'm talking about very positively after this. Right. And, Riley Mills, we've been talking about him for a long time, and where he's at. So a lot of it's just individuals. I mean, defensive back, whatever, can go on and on about where everything is and how do they look without Cam Hart. Cause we were kind of expecting, like, oh, Cam Hart, this could be like a big spring for him. This could be, and of course, right.
Right.
Well, it's just, that's how it always happens, right? Like, we're talking about center, and we're like, well, maybe Pat Coogan can push Zeke Burrell, and then Pat Coogan's out. He hurt his knee, right? So he's out. So that's just how it is, right? And so, but I mean, the good news is that you get to watch other guys and kind of see where they're at. And I don't know. I mean, I just like watching football. So I'm excited. I don't care if it's practice. I don't care if it's a high school game. I don't care if it's a college game, pro game, like whatever. I like watching football. So I'm going to be very excited to watch this practice.
I think that's like the thing for me. And I've been, there's I don't want to say a debate, but like there's the idea that since the media only gets the one day, right? Like the full day. And my thing is, like, I'm unhappy about that in the way that, like, I just want to see football. That's all I want, is I just want to see football. And people can debate whether it means anything, or whether it's important, or whether it's telling, or whether it's anything. Football is football, and I will watch it, right? I will watch practice, and I will watch walkthroughs. Like, I told somebody one time, if they live stream the practices and it was just individuals, I'd watch it every single time. And I'd like record it, and I do all that stuff, right? Like, I think, to me, you can glean something from any little bit. And, and I know you're the same way. So it's just, good for you that you get to go. And I know you're into the D-line guys, and that's cool. They got a new coach and everything.
But I really, honestly, I like watching the safeties and individual. Right. Like, I like watching all that stuff, because a lot of it is seeing, especially when you're seeing the young guys, and it's seeing, like, how well they take instruction. If they make a mistake and they're forced to do the rep again, how do they look when they do it the next time? How fluid are those guys? Because, like, I could just tell, like, I mean, not to just say it's this simple, but sometimes it is. Like, Jeremiah Wilson-Koromoa, like, the first day I saw him at, like, Culver in whatever year it was when he was a freshman, I saw him right away, and I was like, this dude's going to be good. It just was obvious. He was an athlete who took to coaching really, really well. He was super twitchy. He was super skinny, but he was also a guy that you were just like, this guy's a different athlete who does stuff technically better than some of the veterans there already. So it was just obvious. I'm like, this guy's probably going to be really good. And then, a guy like Litchfield, Agilon, who right away, I could see like he was stiff, much stiffer than when you compared him to the rest of the safeties.
Right. Right.
And when he first came too, it was like a good group of safeties, like a really, really strong group of safeties. And from that point, I was like, I think he's going to struggle to play. And then he never really did. Right. It's just, and sometimes guys get better and you're like, wow, like, I mean, it happens, right? It definitely happens where there's guys that you're like, man, this guy really struggled as a freshman. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, he gained weight, he gained confidence. Look at all this and look at the improvement. But then there's some guys, I think, physically, because when you get to this level, there's just guys that are different. They're different. And are you, and they're some different in a good way sometimes, and sometimes different in a bad way, where they're not going to match what the other guys can do. And if you can't do that, then you really have to make up for it in other ways. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do for a lot of guys.
Yeah, body language, man. Like you can always tell, especially when you're behind. Like you've been doing it before, and you've been doing it for so long. Like you could just tell. Like if you're at practice, you can see guys, the way that they go in and out of drills, even like the way they finish a drill, or the way, like all those other things. It's like you could just see it, and so especially for the younger guys too, like because spring for a younger player who hasn't played, like it's a big deal, right? Because this is your time, right? Like this is when
it's your time to try to jump up the depth chart.
Yeah, and they're super focused on you because it's not the season and there's no game plan and there's none of that stuff, right? So the for the younger guys, like this is an important time. So if like someone's there like doesn't have it or doesn't have that body language that you want to see, like they're super alert or that sort of thing, it's super red flaggy. So I'm very interested to kind of hear feedback from you, feedback from Matt, and just like how that all goes. Just take in all of the information, right? Because that's the thing that I look forward to the most is like people who have eyes on the team. What are their impressions? And just like hearing from you, because I know you're super plugged in. You're always really good at evaluating. So that's something for all of us to look forward to. And then the last thing today is obviously I think Keon Keeley, 5-star defensive end, is committed to Notre Dame. He's going to be on campus this weekend. On Monday, Dante Moore is going to be on campus. Are there other visitors that I haven't followed it too closely?
I don't think there's anyone else that I know of. Let me just pull up the visit list right now, but I don't think there's anyone else that I know of that is definitely going to be there. Well, I mean Drake Bowen.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right.
Because Drake
Bowen's going to be there to
hang out with
Keely, yeah. So that's big, right? That's obviously important. So, just an important guys to get on campus. But those are, and then there's going to be a couple 2024 kids that I'm sure most people don't know yet, and we'll get into them later on. But guys who have offers, so that's good.
Right. So just a quick status update, I guess, on Keely. He's obviously probably the top edge rusher in the class in 2023. 5-star prospect. Everyone's after him big time. He's been taking visits throughout the spring. And I think the way it's kind of working with not just him, but a lot of guys who are taking the visits is, Notre Dame is kind of, it's one thing if it's an unofficial visit, you're going with your teammates or you're going on just like your own dime and that sort of thing. I think Notre Dame wants the visits to kind of stop at that. And they don't want the officials and that sort of thing. But it's like, you're gonna drop Keon Keeley, right? Like, so
no, they're not.
So like if he wants
even
to,
if he was to say decommit and they're, as long as he told them you're still in it, they'll still recruit the heck out of him. Like they would be dumb not to.
Right. So they're not, and they wouldn't even, honestly, like, I think that they would fully accept his commitment, even if he was taking officials, right? Like, I think they're prepared to just ride it out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure
opinion.
that I'm positive the goal is that at the end of the spring, they want it to be shut down.
Right.
And I mean, of course, why wouldn't that be the goal? Right.
And it's important that he's on campus this weekend. And I think they're trying to get all those guys on campus again for the spring game. So, multiple visits is obviously important. And it's one of those things where it's like he doesn't have, it doesn't, just in talking to Matt, there's no kind of fraying of the relationship with Notre Dame. Like it seems to me that everything is just kind of still on the up and up with him, and everything is fine. It's just that, he's heavily coveted and he can go anywhere that he wants. And there's a lot of good schools out there. And so, he's pursuing that, but it seems like there's no reason to believe that there's anything imminent coming with him. Right.
No,
He's just, going through the process.
Yeah. He's going through the process. I have no idea how many more visits he plans on taking. All I know is that, he's got the 2 Notre Dame ones.
Right.
Coming up, and obviously those it's critical because I think one thing hasn't been around Al Washington in person since Al Washington's been at Notre Dame, so that's big. I think that's big. He's coming up obviously with his best friend, who is a baseball guy, right?
Reader.
And there's a right
Trey Reader, I think it is.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of things going in Notre Dame's corner that kind of people maybe who are worried maybe have forgotten about. I mean, the other thing is he still publicly very much is all in on Notre Dame. Like, he hasn't stopped being like doing the stuff that all the kids are doing on social media, or like come join us and all that. Like, he's still very much doing that. I think when that stops happening, usually I just with kids, it's like, Kyler Murray deleted all his Arizona Cardinal stuff a thing. It's like, it's probably not happy with the Cardinals right now. So if Keon Keeley takes off Notre Dame commit off the thing, you're allowed to get worried. I think that, if he deletes, stuff from his Instagram or whatever, like, get worried for sure. But that hasn't happened. And I don't know. I think the goal of all these things is he comes and then he's like, this is why I picked Notre Dame. It's a wrap, right? Yeah. And I think, you see what happens, but that's the goal.
Right. And obviously Dante Moore, the big one. He'll be on campus on Monday. Irish Sports Daily, there's an update, not just Dante Moore, and it's also on Keon Keeley and a few other commits that I encourage everyone to go to Irish Sports Daily.
Yeah, check it out. ISD Intel up on the site today.
Yeah, good info. So I'll just say that it seems that the recruiting winds are blowing in a direction that is favorable to Notre Dame with him at this point.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to even if I didn't talk to Matt or anybody, it just
everyone is pointing. There's no one who's not pointing in that direction who isn't delusional,
right? And it's not, and it's but right, unless there's some type of public declaration, and even then, right? Like unless there's a public declaration, you don't know. And so
the other thing is that something's going to happen with a lot of these quarterbacks soon, because most of the quarterbacks too, as much as they want to make the right decision and take their time and visit schools and all that kind of stuff, they also want to be part of a great class, and they want to like make sure they get the receivers they want in the class and all that kind of stuff. And that's part of it. And I think Notre Dame wants that too. So that's why I think that people are like, well, either it's going to be in or out soon, no matter what. And I mean, I think it's fair to say that, like you said, the winds are blowing in the direction of Notre Dame.
The winds, the recruiting winds are blowing nicely. So speaking of receivers, Braylon James was also a part of the ISD Intel. Information. So check it out. All right, let's throw out this question here just to put a wrap on it. Does Jamie have any predictions for what that he thinks he will see tomorrow?
Rue threw up this pic of Mike Frank on there. Oh my gosh. Rue, you're hilarious, man. Rue, great ISD poster. What do I think I'll see tomorrow? Okay. I think Maris Leofo is going to make like 3 plays that everyone's like, wow. That's one of my predictions for tomorrow, that he's going to make a handful of plays that people are going to be like, okay, now we remember why they're saying, where he could go from like, you're like, man, I haven't really seen much from Maris today, and boom. I think that's one prediction. My other prediction is I think the defense is going to be better than the offense. That's just kind of standard for what you get early in the spring, because like it's more vanilla, and the more vanilla it is, the easier it is for the defense to just go out and play, right? So I would be surprised if that wasn't the case.
Plus, I think the defense has made some changes and the offense has not.
Yeah. And then my other prediction is Lorenzo Styles is going to be the best player on the offense, and I don't think it'll be close.
So
that's just
Michael Mayer plays offense for Notre Dame.
I just think of tomorrow, not for the whole season, whatever, right? I'm just saying, like, Michael Mayer.
Yeah, like he doesn't. He might not be.
They might be like, I don't know. It's typically what Notre Dame has done in previous springs when they have a guy who's leading up to. It's pretty obvious this is going to be his last year.
Going to be an All-American.
Yeah, they rep him, but they're not like featuring him in every way because they want to keep that guy healthy.
Yeah,
for the fall, and I think it's understandable why, right? So, yeah. So so taking him off the table because I think, we know. I think Mayer will be the best player on the offense. Very likely will be the best player on the offense this season. I'm just saying for tomorrow, I think Lorenzo Styles is going to be the guy who stands out the most over everybody.
Okay, that sounds good, and I will take it. All right, everybody, we are going to wrap it up today. Jamie's got a hard out in about 5 minutes. So,
wait, one thing I just saw this because this is something I saw on Twitter. This A100 guy, all NFL teams sent representing except the Falcons and Seahawks. That is 100% not true because there were Falcons and Seahawks representatives there. So, like, I saw guys wearing Seahawks and Falcons gear. So they were there. The ones that I didn't see were Patriots, Panthers. Oh gosh, I don't know. But there was 5 teams that weren't there, and that I didn't see. And you know what? Maybe I might have missed whatever, but I definitely didn't see those other 5 teams. But ironically, out of all the guys, the same guy who said that Dennis Allen's going to be there and whatever, he also said the Falcons and Seahawks are the only teams that are only there. And maybe that is, what information that this guy got from what was expected to be there. But there were Falcons Seahawks guys there. So
okay,
yeah,
there you go. Fact check inserted. All right, so thanks everybody for tuning in today. Obviously it was a lot of fun. Go check out irisportsdaily.com over the weekend. There's going to be a ton of stuff. Obviously Jamie's going to be on site. Matt's going to be on site, right? So there's going to be a lot of information coming in from those guys. And, Matt will probably take some video. Jamie will probably have some observations posts, offense and defense, that sort of thing. So look out for that on irisportsdaily.com. And stay tuned to the Irish Sports Daily channel too, because Matt's always putting the videos, practice videos and that sort of thing, interviews that he does, those go on to the Irish Sports Daily channel too. So you're going to want to subscribe to that if you haven't already. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next week. We'll probably do like kind of a recap of all the things that Jamie saw, and maybe I'll pop in and do another one solo. So we'll see. Thanks again everybody for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.